our stay there, it began to rain, and it rained and rained and rained, and it made us late, and we used up all our cover sets, and eventually I do remember sitting on mountaintops covered with tarpaulins and covered by a tarpaulin, and we would do anything to sort of keep ourselves amused. We would sing songs, we would play cards, we would tell awful jokes, we would sleep, rest, eat a lot, much too much, and but we would always keep waiting for that one break in the clouds when a tiny piece of sunshine might come through, and then it was like being asked to get ready for a party and then being told to sit very still and not get mucky or dirty, and then 8 hours later you might get asked to rush out and perform. And of course it was icy cold at times, especially high on the mountains. So I would be freezing as I was sort of trying to look jolly and full of delight.
I guess there was a lot of pressure at the end of the schedule to do the last scene, which was shot, which was the first scene in the movie.
The first scene in the movie
which
being
was doing your opening, the opening song. That's the last thing shot on location.
The last thing shot on location in my memory was, and I'm just talking now, was going over the mountains to Italy. Wasn't that the last thing we shot?
No, it was the opening song.
Oh, okay, I can tell you a lot about that one. Okay.
And so if you could tell us about getting up to that location in the mud and the ox cart and getting the twirl and the helicopter.
Okay. The last shot of all that was photographed was the very opening shot of the movie, that beautiful series of shots of Austria that lead eventually to my coming towards the camera across the field and making the big turn and starting to sing The Sound of Music. And, well, it was quite hilarious because the main part of that shot was shot by a helicopter, from a helicopter. Camera was kind of hanging out over the side of the helicopter, which meant that I would be told to start striding across the field. All of this done with bullhorns because, of course, nobody could be in sight on that vast field except me. And so it was, okay, Julie, the helicopter's coming in over the trees. You can start walking now. And so I would stride and stride across the field. And the helicopter would kind of come in sideways in a sort of crab-like way towards me. And at a particular moment, when I judged it had come close enough, I did a big turn and began to sing. And what nobody knew was that we did this any number of times so that the cameraman was absolutely sure that he'd gotten the shot that was necessary. But once that particular moment had been captured, the helicopter, of course, would go around me and go back to the end of the field, and I would race back to the other end of the field, and we'd start all over again. Well, the downdraft from the jets of the helicopter, it was very close by the time it got to me, and it was so strong that it would just level me onto the field. So I don't know how many takes we took, but about 8 or 9 times I was absolutely leveled into the mud. And I kept thinking, I will stand up next time. I will definitely not be flattened by this incredible sort of storm that attacked me from the jets. I fell down every time. But listen, it was something to laugh at later.
It's because people, it's such a heavenly moment in the film. It's like, it was hell.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, it was mostly, it was this crazy world of filmmaking. I mean, one knew what one was trying to do, but it was so funny behind the scenes.
Another one shot on location was a new song written for the film, I Have Confidence. Could you talk about some of the filming of that?
Yeah.
Some of the things you brought to it, like the little pratfalls and stumbling, getting the guitar caught in the bus.
Yeah. One of the songs that was shot on location was I Have Confidence, and that was not in the original Broadway show, and I think it was written especially for the film. And the lyrics were a kind of mad jumble. I guess it sort of signified Maria's sort of confusion in her head, and so nothing really made sense. And so we decided that the best way for Maria to sing this was to be quite sort of wacky and so full of nerves that she tripped a little bit and she jammed her guitar in the bus a little bit. And so it was great fun coming up with bits and pieces of shtick to do to make the song seem as silly and confused and worried as possible. And I remember one moment of that song when Maria comes to the gates to look at that big house for the very first time, and I don't think anybody knows it, but in fact it was raining in the background. Thunder was rumbling all over the place and great big drops were coming down, but it takes an awful lot of rain to show up on film, and it never showed. So.
To get back to...
Do you want to get into anything like the ox cart or the farmer that punctured the great big hole? Has anybody told about that?
Because Bob forgot about that.
Oh, no!
I said, well, okay. Yes, go ahead and go back and tell that. About getting up to that location.
A lot of crazy things happened on location. Funny in retrospect, but terrible at the time. So many of the locations were very high and inaccessible, and one would park the bus and the camera equipment and all of those kind of things at the bottom of the mountain and then have to carry it up by hand, and we'd all have to plod a couple of miles maybe, or a mile anyway, to get to this sort of remote spot where we were shooting. So one would bundle oneself up, and eventually on a very cold day I remember being in full makeup and full sort of peasant skirt with a big fur coat around my shoulders, and they gave me a ride with all the camera equipment in the back of an ox cart pulled by these two big oxen that were just sinking knee-deep into mud just to get us up the hill. And there was a very angry farmer, I remember, who got angry that all this Hollywood crew were upsetting his cows and I think spoiling their milk or something. So we had a pretty little pond built, a little stream built for me to throw pebbles in the middle of the opening song. And it was there one day, and we came the next day to continue that moment, and it was completely dry, and the farmer had come out with a pitchfork and just pierced all the plastic that was lining our beautiful little stream, and all the water had run away, and we had to start all over again with that. And I believe that the company asked the farmer not to mow his field, keep the corn or the hay, whatever it was, as high as possible, and because we had to shoot it one day and then come back a couple of weeks later and shoot it again. And of course he was paid for this, paid for the corn that he would lose, and so he said, absolutely, I won't touch it. And when we came back 2 weeks later, it had been absolutely leveled. So I think he'd gotten his money and gotten his hay crop in as well. I guess we had to find another field for that.
You wonder how Maria, if she had really gone up to the mountain to sing the song, would have gotten there.
Well,
if there was any ox cart in there.
Well, I guess Maria herself, the real Maria, probably had a very good pair of legs that was used to mountain climbing, but this Maria huffed and puffed her way up the hill and needed a good hot cup of coffee at the end of it. I remember one day we were sitting around in rain and we were so cold, and we discovered that the farmer of this particular area made his own I'll stop and start again. What is that? Schnapps, I guess. Yeah. We were sitting around and we were absolutely freezing cold and very wet, and we discovered that the farmer of the area where we were shooting made his own schnapps, and it was passed around, and boy, were we in a good mood. About 10 minutes later, there was a good shot for all of us, and it was the most delicious stuff, and it couldn't have come at a better moment.
As long as you're talking about waiting around for the rain, tell me about the vocal zones.
Oh, I've said that we would do anything to amuse ourselves while we were waiting for the clouds to part and the sun to come through. And Mark Bro and Dee Dee Woods and Sol Chaplin and myself, and I think a couple of other people whom I can't remember at this moment, we would we would harmonize and sing any song that we could think of very loudly just to keep ourselves warm. And we decided that we would call ourselves the vocal zones, which happen to be a little pastel that I use sometimes when I'm about to sing.